Hello, hello, hello. We're going to talk about section 2.2. I'm going to get you some overall ideas of these other graphs and how to do some of the homework. Ready? So bar graphs, which you already know about, they can be about qualitative data or quantitative data. Remember, qualitative is categories, like how many people want popcorn versus crackers. Quantitative would be numbers, like how long did you sleep last night? Okay. So bar graphs can be for either one, either categories or numbers. Bar graphs are great going up or sideways, horizontal or vertical. Bar graphs are great for, or that you have to make sure that they are the same width so that it compares appropriately. And how long the bar is depends on either the frequency or a percentage. You can use them with just counting or percents, but you have to label it really well. If you just give me a bar graph with no labels, it is useless to me or misleading. There's different kinds of bar graphs, which we're not going to focus on a ton, but this was from a different year, so it's not your classes. And it was comparing scores from a quiz. And I asked those students, so if we compare, let's say, I don't remember which was which, but the blue one and the red one. The blue class is one of these bells, and the red class is the other one. Who do you think did better on this overall? I mean, there's more red up here, so whatever the red class was, right? Um, but I that's one way to look at it. If you look over here, the stacked bars, this is how many total students had C's. This would be used to see how well both classes did overall. And that's pretty good. That's not too bad overall. If you're going to change the scale on a graph, I call them squiggles, and you can use those to represent a change on a scale on an axis, and they can be like this little weird looking squiggle or just two bars like this. And both of them just mean, hey, this is not drawn to scale. This probably goes up a lot more. They just cut out a bunch of things because they wanted to show you a little bit and then they wanted to show you a lot of numbers. They skipped some on here. And that can be misleading if you're not careful. Pie charts, of course, are about percents of the whole thing. So that same year, I was comparing third bell and seventh bell scores on that quiz. And overall, looking at it real quick, I mean, I don't know, can you tell who did better overall looking at this? How do you decide who did better? Well, maybe you compare A's. How much got an A in this group compared to how much got an A, okay, none in this group, right? Or how many got F's? Well, a lot of F's here, not as many F's here. But 39% of that class got an F. That does not mean 39 students, right? So this may have just been a smaller group of kids. They may have had less F's than the other class. It may have been this class maybe have had 5 F's, and this class maybe only had 2, right? So it's hard to tell when you're looking at percentages of separate groups and be able to compare them. But if all you care about is percents in that one group, pie graphs are great. But comparing pie graphs is a little bit tricky and can be misleading. A Pareto chart is a special type of bar graph where you only use them for category data, qualitative data, where you put things in category, and there's a couple other key features. You always put these in order. The highest frequency goes on the left, and then it goes down from there. The reason that you do that is that it helps show where the biggest problems or the biggest helps are. In this case, this is about complaints, so we're going to see the biggest problems. Customers are complaining about the documents with this company. They're not complaining about delivery as much as they're complaining about documents. So as a boss, I'd be going, well, we need to fix our documents. And the reason that a lot of companies do that is because there's this rule called the Pareto rule or the 80-20 rule that says 80% of problems are usually caused by only 20% of the issues. So you can fix a lot of problems by fixing a small amount of things. Like in this chart here, if I just fixed documents, then it looks like my company would be doing a lot better. But maybe if I fix documents and product quality, my company would be doing great. Packaging, delivering, other stuff we're doing great on. So if I can fix these two things as a boss, then I can make the company do a lot better. Here's another type of Pareto chart, and this has the Pareto on it, right? It's saying over shelf life, the food defect, right? Over shelf life is the biggest problem. And this is about the cumulative frequency, right? So we're starting at 55% here. We had the 45 and 14, and we get 72%. And up here, we find the 80%, right? And so 80% of our issues we can fix right here, which is what you want to focus on. Over a period of time at regular intervals is what's called a time series graph, and it helps you see trends over time. This one is about company sales in millions of dollars over certain years, starting in 1986 and going up to looks like 2000. Up and to the right is usually the good goal. You'll hear that a lot in different things. You'll say, oh, I'm trending up and to the right. Well, that means they're doing something well and things are getting better over time. Now you can still have a couple dips here and there, but if your trend overall is going up and to the right, then you've got a good thing going on and you want to continue that. Here's another example, gold prices. They started out pretty darn low and then they had a dip here, but they're still going up and to the right. How to decide which graph to use. Here's the trick. Take a picture of this, write it down, look at this slideshow later, whatever you want to do. Bar graphs are good for either categories or numbers. They're good for counting or percents, and they're good in different versions of it. Pareto graph helps you see the biggest problem, the 80-20 rule. Where are the big problems to solve? Time series graphs, that helps you see the trend over the time. Circle graph is great for qualitative and percents of total. Best if 10 or fewer categories. For all of these types of graphs, you better label, 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 because something could look pretty but be absolutely insane data. And there are tricky, misleading graphs out there. And part of what I love about this class is helping you understand. If you understand how graphs work, then you can understand better the information that's thrown at you on a regular basis. Here's an example. These two graphs have the exact same data on them. The only thing that's different is how the y-axis is spread out. This one over here only goes from 3.1%, 3.14, 3.14% to 3.15%. It looks like things are going up and to the right. But if you scale this to go from 0 to 3.5%, it looks like nothing's changing over time. And that's the thing. This looks like, well, this is a big drastic change. When really, look at it perspective here. This is about the same as normal. This is not a big change, right? This one says there's a huge spike in average home prices. Okay, well, from 2014 to 2015, whoa, that is a big difference. Okay, now wait, look at the numbers. 250,000, 252,000. That is only $2,000 difference. And in the scheme of 250 grand, 2,000 is a small amount of change. But this graph makes it look huge. What news commentary or source do you like? So with this one, I mean, clearly everybody loves Fox News, but that's not really what it's saying, right? And I'm not saying you should or should not like Fox News, although I do have an opinion I cannot share. And this one says, okay, well, Democrats hate it and Republicans love it. But when you start looking at that, basically they're saying, given the choice between one thing and anything else, it's a little misleading. It would make more sense if they had one thing and then one bar for each of these. Then you could see what people really trust more. This is just very misleading because it's only one group, one answer versus, or one news source versus a whole bunch of other ones. And it's just kind of crazy is what it is. Okay. So with that in mind, let's look at this one. This was posted, and it says, forget pepperoni, mushroom is Britain's most liked pizza topping, 65%, followed by onions, 62%, and then ham, 61%. What? That does not make any sense. How does 65 plus 62 is more than 100% of Britain's population? That's more than 100%. So when you're doing a pie graph or something that makes it look like a pie graph and it's more than 100%, it doesn't really make sense. So you want to use some other type of chart and some other way to describe it than this one. And if you read the fine print, it says, generally speaking, which of the following do you like on a pizza? It does not say which one's your favorite. It's just which ones do you like, and then select as many as you like. So they selected a whole bunch of different answers there, and it kind of makes the data a little interesting that way. So let's do at least one or two examples real quick from homework 2.2 on Math Excel. Use the stem and leaf plot to list the actual data entries. Okay, they just want me to write down what the answers were. Okay, so this key right here, ooh, all of the wrong. This key right here tells me that if I see 2 with a line 7, that means I'm talking about the number 27. So here, the actual data entries, we've got 27, and then we've got, oh, wrong buttons, my bad, 32, and then we've got 41. I keep pushing the wrong buttons here. 41, and then 43, 43, 45, 46, 46, 48, 50, 51. See, I'm down here now, right? 51, 52, 53, 53. There's a lot of them in the 50s. Another 53, right? That's all three of these guys. 54, and all the rest of these, right? I went ahead and wrote the rest of them down. That's all you have to do with this. Then it says, what's the maximum data entry? Okay, well, my highest data entry is an 83. What's the lowest? Whoops. What's the lowest here? My lowest was a 27. Those would be the answers. That'd be it. This other question, which is number 4, whoops. Number 4 up here is saying, make a stem and leaf plot and describe any patterns. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to try and find the smallest number. It looks like it's going to start with a 6. So where are my 6s? I got a 68 here, and that's it. So 8 goes right there. That's it. Then I'm going to find all my 7s. 7, mark that out. 7, 7, 7. Oh, I forgot a 68. My bad. 7, 7, 7. There's a 7. There's a 7. 7, 7. Okay, what's the smallest one? 72. And then 75. And then 75. And 76. And 79. And then we have 8,